Hi, everybody. I'm Britany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is Dr. Gulnoza Said with the Committee to Protect Journalists. Dr. Said, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a follow-up to a conversation we had over a year ago when Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich was originally detained in Russia. Now he has a trial date set. It's for next week, June 26th. What's your reaction to the news that he will be standing trial?
I've been saying from the beginning that it's very likely that Evan will be tried and convicted in Russia before we will see any development for his release, namely potential prisoners exchange. So in that regard, this news didn't come as a surprise. The trial will start next week, and it is very likely to last for a few months before we see conviction.
And last year, like you said, you believe that Russia believes in their eyes that Evan's already guilty. He'll likely face a conviction. So when or at all can we expect the United States to step in and maybe see a prisoner swap go into action?
I think the answer to this question lies with the Russian authorities rather than with the American authorities. As far as we know from the Wall Street Journal and other reports, the US officials have been in touch with the Russians, negotiating a potential prisoners exchange for quite a few months, actually. But I think the Russians are playing a long-term game here. I think for them now it's very important to see the results of the U.S. elections and maybe even the inauguration of the next president before they will actually act.
Do you think does the CPJ rather think that the Biden administration, the State Department are doing enough to secure Evan's release? Because I want to get your response to some comments from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He said last year that the United States was intensely engaged in talks with Russia to secure the release, but he added that at the moment he didn't see a, quote, clear way forward. So now, a year later, here we are, Evan's still going to trial. He's still detained in Russia. State Department labeling him wrongly detained. Are you happy with the progress?
Look, we are not privy to all the details of the negotiations. We know as much as the State Department officials tell us in some meetings, and as much as we know from the media reports. As far as I understand, the US officials have been very committed to get Evan released and return him back to the United States. But as I said, a lot depends on the Russian officials and their approach, and they're playing a long-term game here. They see Evan as nothing but a bargaining chip, and they're going to, in their eyes, Evan's value will increase if he is a convicted felon, and that's where the whole process is headed.
I want to know how Evan's doing, if you have any insight into that, because he's been in a Moscow prison called Lefortovo for over a year now. And last year, when you and I talked, you said that prison was notorious for its horrible conditions. So does the CPJ have a sense of how he's holding up?
Evan has been really he's a very strong person. He has kept his high spirits. I think partially it's because he knows Russia so well. He knows how the government works, and he knows that he's innocent and he is a part of a big game the Kremlin has been playing with the United States and with the West. And he also knows that we at CPJ and many other press freedom advocates, his journalist colleagues, his family, everyone have been supporting him, have been with him emotionally and spiritually. So he's been very strong in hands how the whole process, including this judiciary, works in Russia, and I think he prepared.
I know you're saying you believe Russia's playing this long game here. He's likely to be convicted. He faces up to 20 years. What are you looking out for next then within the trial, after the trial, anything between now and hopefully his release?
Look, the worst thing about these kind of cases in Russia is that espionage cases are usually held behind closed doors. So we will know very little about the details of the charges or the case itself. Hope that the representatives of the U.S. Embassy and Consulate will be able to see Evan during the trial, the hearings, but not be present during the entire hearings every single time because they will not be allowed. And it's very normal for Russia to convict anybody with espionage. Actually, the conviction rate is over 90%. And there are lots and lots of espionage cases in Russia practically every day. It's usually the cases that involve Russian citizens, not necessarily foreign citizens and not journalists. That's why we may not know much about them, but what we know is the conviction rate is very high.
Last year, you said that this is, you hoped that the solution would be political and not legal. You think that this is a highly politicized case. Can you talk about that?
This is indeed a highly politicized case because even the detention of Evan was approved by President Putin, as far as we learned from our sources in Russia. He confirmed and he approved and he has it under his control, as they say, in Russia, which means that he is monitoring it very closely. His aides reported to him and he knows what exactly he wants out of the deal with the United States or with the US and other Western countries, because one of the potential individuals that he wants to exchange Evan for is in jail in Germany. I also wanted to add that the very fact that Evan's case is sent to a court in Yekaterinburg, the city in Siberia where he was first detained, shows that the Russian authorities try to sort of keep make it very difficult for U.S. diplomats and other foreign diplomats to monitor the trial, to be present, even by standing outside of the courthouse, and to sort of decrease the attention to the case as much as they can. But at the same time, they're trying to keep pretending that this is a very legal case where the rules are followed because according to the Russian criminal code, the case is usually sent to the court where a crime was allegedly committed. That's why we are going to see Evan in a courtroom in Yekaterinburg and not in Moscow where he's been held so far.
This is really scary, a scary story for journalists all over the world and particularly in Russia. What is the implication here for foreign correspondents in Russia?
Look, first of all, Evan is not the only American journalist in Russian jail. There is Alsu Kurmasheva, a correspondent of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which is a U.S. Congress-funded broadcaster that works editorially independently from the U.S. authorities, and she's been in detention in Russia since October, also on absurd charges. And as we see these two cases, and also there are other cases of foreign journalists being kicked out of Russia, with their accreditation not being renewed or their visa not being renewed, we see that there is this witch hunt against foreign media in Russia after they basically eliminated all independent local media outlets inside the country after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. They went ahead with trying to silence all foreign correspondents working in Russia, and Evan is victim of that approach of the Kremlin.
Dr. Gulnoza Said, thank you so much for the conversation, and I hope the next time we speak, there's a better update here.
Thank you so much.